tragedy and trauma, they don't discriminate. And PTSD is not exclusive to the military. And while I may not have asked for this platform and these things to happen to me in my life, my men and these families, we have this platform now. And if we can use it to make a positive impact through our story and hopefully get other people to learn to accept and to make the right choice, and that it's not a one-time deal, it's a daily thing you have to do in life. We look at it as not just a responsibility, but an obligation.
You're listening to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, a podcast where I have conversations with inspirational people. My name is Chris, but my family calls me Kristof. My goal is to have as many conversations as possible with people who have forged their own path by pursuing their dreams, making them a reality, all the while emitting positivity and sharing this knowledge with others. I seek these people out and share this information with you, proving to the world that you can do what makes you happy and do what you want for a living while being a good human being. We'll talk about careers, but we'll also cover any story that inspires. Let's do this while helping each other. Thanks for listening. I'm happy you're here. What's up, my friends? Welcome to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, Create Your Career. Thank you so much for being here. This is conversation number 167, total episodes number 290. There are two segments within the podcast. This is one of them. It's the conversations, is where I interview a guest, and the other segment is the contemplations, and that's where it's just me, and I talk about and reflect on conversations that I've had throughout the week with you, the listener, and anybody else in my life that bears repeating. So thank you so much again for being here. My guest today is Jeff Morris. He's an Army vet. He served in OIF, so Iraq in 2000s. Had some very difficult deployments, experienced lots of loss of life, unfortunately, but out of the darkness and out of the tough times, the tragedy and the trauma, he has created some incredible things like Legion 8. He's also written the book Legion Rising, and he's just an all-around good dude trying to effect change, positive change in his life and the lives of others. He shared some really, really deep stories, some pretty crazy stories. The mirror story is the one that hit me the hardest. You'll know it when you hear it. We talk a lot of times about reflecting and looking at yourself in the mirror, and when Jeff tells his story, it's powerful. I mean, that's the best way to describe it. So you can find this podcast on all podcast apps. You can find it on YouTube. Head over to YouTube and subscribe. That would be really helpful. And then heading over to Apple Podcast or iTunes and rating 5 stars. Tell me what you like. That would be awesome and helpful. Sharing with a friend is also a phenomenal way to help the podcast out. And yet again, I will say thank you so much for listening, for subscribing, for sharing. And as I record this, it's June 2020. There's a lot of things going on, but we need to stay together and we need to not be divided. We need to come together, and we can affect change that way by having these kind of conversations, and equally important, not just having the conversations, but going out and actually taking action. So my thoughts are always with you all. Be safe. Stay safe, keep others safe. And without further ado, welcome to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, Create Your Career.
Hi, Chris, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's always humbling to do another one of these. I'm always excited to do another one of these. And you're just saying you had caught a couple of my own episodes. And to me, that's always just like, I know I've been hosting a podcast for a while, but when people tell me that, I sometimes forget that people are actually listening. And I'm trying not to speak negatively of myself. I've been working on that. So I appreciate you coming on. It means a lot. I know it means a lot to the people that are listening as well. There's a lot of things that I'd love to talk about. We have about 30 minutes, and I want to talk about a couple of those. But before we get into that, would you mind introducing us to maybe some of the people that might not know who you are?
Yeah, no, thanks. Jeff Morris. I was a infantry officer in the Army. I always say, like, back in a previous life. So I went in after 9/11. So maybe stepping back, I initially,
Sure.
this will hit home with you. The initial plan in life was to be a SEAL. I wanted to go in the Navy. Grew up down on the beach in Florida. And when I got out of college, 10-foot bulletproof, like, the Navy will take me as a SEAL. And the recruiter was like, dude, it doesn't work this way. This is pre-9/11. But I tried anyways. And sure enough, didn't get it. The first year wasn't selected. And I said, I'll try it again the next year. And then during that year, just had some lingering shoulder problems. I played football in college and ended up having to go in, and first surgery wasn't too big of a deal. Just scoped it, but the doc said, man, we got to go in and do reconstructive surgery probably. So after that, not just the Navy, every branch of the military said thanks, but no thanks. So I left Florida, came out here to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, started a career, and then 9/11 happened, and just felt compelled to give it one more shot. And I was a few years removed from the surgery at that point, and so chose the Army this time and went the infantry route. And so I got my commission in April of 2003, and all the schoolhouse stuff you do in the infantry. And And yeah, man, it was a whirlwind. Was assigned to Fort Hood and with First Cavalry. As soon as I got there, the unit had already deployed. I met them over there about a month after they had got there. Did my platoon leader time in Iraq in downtown Baghdad on Haifa Street. Redeployed. Became an XO right away with our sister company, which was great because I had worked with those guys the whole previous year. And then kind of in a weird set of circumstances, I was in the process of putting my special forces packet in for the SFAS, the Assessment and Selection Course.
Okay.
And First Cav was going through this transformation from traditional siloed armor and infantry units to combined arms battalions. And so my company that I was an XO over, we got moved over to be a part of what was traditionally an armor battalion. And I say that because being traditionally armor, they had no captains in the queue to take command. And our company commander, captain, made the choice to get out of the Army. And so the higher ups, they came to me and asked me if I would be as a young first lieutenant, 9 months as a PL, 5 months as an XO, and like, hey, you want to take command for a few months? I'm like, yeah, okay. So that was the plan. Wow. I was supposed to get at least 90 days so I can get rated, and then off to hopefully SFAS. And at the end of that 90 days, bosses came back to me and said they were happy with the job I was doing, and we had a pretty good idea of where we were going to be deploying to. And my first deployment, the unit had seen a lot of action. Mm-hmm. So they asked me if I would withdraw my SFAS packet and they would let me stay in and get a full command. So yeah, man, I was, I never went to the career course or anything. I was in command for about a year before I was promoted to captain, and then off to Iraq right after that. And I stayed in command for a little over half that deployment and then made the choice to leave. So yeah, the second deployment was October of 06 to January of 08. So they were there as part of the surge. Mm-hmm. And then once we returned in January of 08, I made the decision to resign my commission that April. Mm-hmm. Actually, it was May. It was my terminal leave date.
Mm. And what led to that, the resignation?
I was multiple things. I was, we may get into it. Second deployment was really tough.
Yeah.
Lost 8 men.
Yeah.
And, my first deployment had been tough. I mean, I had, of the 34 men under me, I had 27 Purple Hearts that first deployment. And then the second deployment, lost the 8 guys. And the difference being, I just felt, and this is Jeff's opinion and mine only, that I just felt that just kind of disenchanted with the mission and what we were doing. Some of the positions we were asking our men to go out and do things. Not that I wasn't supportive of the mission because I had orders and I was going to go do my job, but what were we accomplishing? What was the end state? Sure. What were we really doing to make a difference? And I'm the one looking at my men and talking to these families and telling them that your boy died a hero, making a difference. And in some cases, I really struggled with saying that because in some cases it seemed like men died, but we're on a mission to make sure we got a photo op with the Iraqi army. So yeah, man. So I just, I'd done my time and I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world. And amazing group of guys and 2 incredible opportunities in those deployments. But it was time for me to transition and move on to the next phase of life.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that. And I know, and if the listeners, if you don't know, Jeff is the author of Legion Rising and the founder of Legion 8, which is the nonprofit. And I was going to ask you so that you could say here on the podcast why you founded that, why you created that, and what that's about. And I'd love to get in a little bit more of that. I think I told you a second ago off camera, I love having people on here, but I love having people on here that are helping people, right? And you've experienced a lot of things that I appreciate you sharing with me. I know you've talked about them before, but it's never easy to talk about. I've had experiences in my life that are very devastating, and I know whenever I talk about them, they're still hard for me to talk about. So a couple of things that I take away here. I mean, there's a lot of important things going on in here, but I always want to articulate to people that you can go through tragedy, you can go through trauma, you can experience guilt potentially, all of these things, but out of it, that's how you choose. That is up to you, and you can create something out of this to help yourself and to help other people. And that's something you have done. So I asked the question why you got out, why you chose that. Yeah. I appreciate you answering. Obviously, I speak about transitions quite a bit, so I kind of like honing down on why an individual left the military or maybe why they left a career. Sometimes it's on purpose. Sometimes that individual chose that. sometimes they did not choose to get out of the military or that career. They got fired.
Yeah, I
They
saw
got
that
fired
plenty.
or something too. So it can
Yeah.
come from everywhere. So and for your situation awareness and for other people listening, that's why I ask these questions, because I want to use you, Jeff, and all these other guests that I have on here as a real life breathing example of this is somebody that did these things and this is why they did them. And even though they suffer the tragedy, like I mentioned, you can still go on and do great things. So I think that's a great segue into Legion 8. Why you named that, I think, is pretty obvious at that point, and I think it's really powerful that you did that. But honestly, it may sound obvious to you and other people that have gone on to do similar things, but I really want to know why, again, asking the question with wanting to highlight and help other people to start things as well. But you could have just come home, threw in the towel, and just been in a dark place, been in a bad place, and not done anything. But you went on to have conversations like this and start that. So how did you go from probably, I don't want to assume any emotion that you experienced, but how did you go from probably a not great place, broadly speaking, to creating something like this to help other people?
So yeah, man, to be transparent here, I did come home and throw in the towel, and I was in that dark place for almost 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And, combined with everything that had happened with the men, the survivor's guilt, I had one particular event happen to me that was very traumatic, and it's just something that haunted me. Marriage was on the rocks at deployment, came home, so just all these things. And so I just blocked it out, just compartmentalized, and was being the biggest hypocrite, man. Guys were having problems from the unit. I stayed in that command mode, and I said all the right things. I told them to get help and talk to people. And, but the fact of the matter is I did none of those things myself. I got a good job. At that point, I was just going to immerse myself in work. And my ex-wife and I, we had our child together 3 months before that second deployment. And so when I came home, when her and I decided to part ways, it was, all right, my focus is, my son and work. And on paper, man, I looked good job, was making good money, 9 to 5, put the smile on, and then just went back to my house at night and I describe it, man, I just went into my hole. It wasn't drugs or alcohol. I did nothing to be the old me, the guy that wanted to get out there and meet people and develop and cultivate relationships. And, I did none of those things. I just went home and thought and felt guilty. Tried to find things that I could immerse myself in, anything but dealing with what ultimately I knew I was going to have to deal with. But
eventually, yeah.
So yeah, man, it was a rough couple of years, and again, everything looked good, but it's almost 5 years of my life I'll never get back. And finally it came to a head when something happened, and the stories in the book. And I'm a 45-year-old man, and sometimes you still need mom to put you back in line. And my mom looked at me one day and giving me all the crap you want, but I'm 45 and I'm always going to be my mom's baby. And she had this phrase growing up, and it was, my baby's big blue eyes, they're just the light of my life. And if ever I'm down or sad, I just look at them and know that everything's going to be okay. So it was Christmas of 2011, and I went home and grabbed a beer, sat on the couch, and my mom looked at me and just started crying. And I thought she had some bad health news or something to say, and she just finally got a hold of herself, and she just said, the light's gone. And when I look at my baby's big blue eyes, I don't see the light anymore. I see that he looks dead inside. And it just breaks my heart that there's nothing I can do to change that. It's something he's going to have to figure out on his own. But for the first time in my life, I don't know if everything's going to be okay. And you talk about a gut punch, man. And so that was kind of the catalyst. I went and took my own advice after that, and I started going to counseling, and I looked for any and every reason in the world to have an out and an exit strategy. But this dude was just great. And through that, some of the things we talked about, beforehand and at the beginning of, we talked a lot about acceptance and a lot about choice. And just through this, these months of going to see this individual, it kind of ended with, I was your typical guy. I didn't share these things with anybody. And he encouraged me to share it with a group of friends. And so some people had moved to Tyler, Texas at this point, and I'd met some people through CrossFit. And one night, got a little liquid courage, took a beer or 6 to get the guts to talk about it. And I got a bunch of tattoos, and they all knew something was up, but no one ever asked out of respect. And So yeah, man, I opened up this night and I just shared everything. And I
Wow.
shared, my own demons and, it was just really powerful. And the expectation of, I'd always feared, like a lot of people that have, a lot of veterans in particular, people that have been through tragedy and trauma, veterans and non-veterans, that if people find out about these things from your past, that they're going to paint you with a scarlet letter and like, whoa, that guy's jacked up in the head. But instead, this group of just incredible friends, man, they just walked up and hugged me and told me they loved me.
Yeah.
And one of the guys, and during when I was talking, I'd refer to the 8 men as the Legion 8 because that was our unit nickname. That deployment was Legion. And he said, how about we come up with a hero wad for the guys? Everyone should be familiar with the hero workouts and CrossFit.
Mm-hmm.
So we took our slightly drunken minds and came up with this ridiculously hard workout. And, we were going to just do a one-time event for it. And that was the plan. And, it was neat when we did it. It was just a lot of the men from the unit showed up and some of the family members showed up. And it was just amazing. One of the moms of the guys that was killed said it perfect. She said, for 5 years, we've gotten together with tears in our eyes. And today we all have a smile on our face. And then 2 other things happened. People started, this is going to be a yearly thing, right? Hey, why the hell not, man? Let's do it.
Yeah.
And then an individual came up to me and said, look, I was in the military, but I was a paramedic. And you were talking about this thing that happened to you and how you were able to learn to accept it and make that daily choice. And I have this thing in my background of, carrying the body of a dead child out of a house that had burned down, and it's haunted me. And, right there, it just kind of clicked, man, that, like you said, tragedy and trauma, they don't discriminate, and PTSD is not exclusive to the military. And while I may not have asked for this platform and these things to happen to me in my life, my men and these families, we have this platform now, and if we can use it to make a positive impact through our story and hopefully get other people to learn to accept and to make the right choice, and that it's not a one-time deal, it's a daily thing you have to do in life, that, we look at it as not just a responsibility, but an obligation.
I love everything about that, Jeff, as real and raw as that is and as tough as it was. 5 years. I mean, that's a long time.
Yeah.
And I think from what I've seen during those 5 years, and I've kind of said something similar before on the podcast, before in another episode, is during those 5 years, you don't know that it's just going to be 5 years, right? You don't you don't know that there's going to be an end in sight. Frankly, you probably do not think there is an end in sight, but you made the decision. And it's funny how we can give advice to so many other people, but we never take it ourselves. It's one of the things that I remember you saying, and it's just like, how many times do we get ourselves in situations like that where it's so easy to be the person that gives that advice because we're not the ones living it, but when we are living it for ourselves, we can't do anything about it. But what a real moment it is for your mom to say what she did too, Wow.
And it's funny you say that, and I'll share it, and because what you just said, I was going to say, it's hard to look in the mirror.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's easy to give her advice. And so for me, the instant was a traumatic thing that happened to me. And I'm not giving anything away, is when one of my men was killed, he was shot by a sniper, and we carried him in. And long story short, it was a pretty ugly scene. And when I was cleaning myself up, I looked at the mirror and I had this cut going across my face. And I didn't realize it because I was just numb in that environment. And it took me a little bit to snap to. Then I felt that same burning sensation on my hand. I looked down and I had fragments of that man's skull stuck in my hands. And when I'd wiped the sweat away from my face, I had cut myself open. And so literally and figuratively, I couldn't look into a mirror. So you talk about making decisions and choices throughout my, I don't call it recovery, I call it reawakening. It was, how can I get me back to being me? How can I get back to literally and figuratively being able to look into a mirror again?
Damn.
It's a hard thing to do. It's an easy thing to say. It's a hard thing to do, man. Talking about acceptance and choice is so easy for me to say, but when I had to go through it, man, I brushed my teeth in the shower. I kept shaving my head. I got it now, the whole COVID-19. I let my 13-year-old buzz my head. But back then, I just, anything that I could do to literally not look into a mirror for almost 5 years, man, it's tough.
Okay. So you talked about counseling. I want to know, and there's other people that are experiencing similar but different things, if not really similar. But like you said, PTSD does not discriminate. So you talked about counseling. What are some of the other ways, maybe externally, but maybe equally importantly, internally, that you're able to overcome and slowly climb out of this?
it was a lot of it started that day. The first Legion 8 event we did
Okay.
is
Okay.
it was the first time, I felt like I was doing the right thing again,
Yeah.
giving advice.
Yeah.
But when I
Yeah.
had this individual come up to me
Yeah.
and to like see that blank stare in his face that I know all so well because that was me for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about it, like you don't know how long that's going to go on. And I always
Yeah.
say, like, this doesn't happen overnight. I was the fun, outgoing guy. Not the dude that holes up in his house every night and does nothing and doesn't try anything to do anything to meet people.
Mm-hmm.
That was the exception. But over time, the exception became the norm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Exactly.
it felt, when I got that feeling again of, man, I just made a positive impact in that person's life. It took me back to the days of just the honor and privilege to lead men and women, what I consider the ultimate test, and to have an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to make a positive impact in their life. And just for that brief little moment, that snapshot, I felt it with that individual, and it lit that match again that I wanted to feel it again. And so from there, the guy that wouldn't talk about anything for 5 years, I was like, the guy that won't shut up about it now, because it's not that it's a thing of, I want other people to experience that I had with my mom, that I had with that individual,
Mm-hmm.
and to light that match and see the light come back on in their eyes and know that that person now understands, yes, it's a hard thing to do, but now they have a path. And
Mm-hmm.
I always say that the greatest thing sometimes that I think we can give as people is the ability for people to look at someone and say, you know what, if he can do it or she can do it, so can I.
Yeah, man.
And by sharing this message in the story, that's what I want people to see. Like, man, Jeff is a normal guy. Wasn't some SEAL or Delta guy, just an average dude. But if they can see me stand up in a room and be vulnerable and open up, I mean, the next time I give a talk and don't cry will be the first time, But people look at us at this image of like, oh, they're big, tough dudes. And we're not, man, we're normal. And so
Mm-hmm.
again, if I can set an example that if I can do it, then so can they, then that's an honor and a privilege, man. It's something got to keep doing.
I agree, and you definitely hit the nail on the head on what I'm trying to do here, which I was saying in the beginning of you're an example of this. It's one thing to hear about people doing it, but to hear somebody's, like, I guess what I'm saying is it's one thing to read a story or to see somebody on the news, but I think when you have a podcast that's created by just me, some regular guy that had absolutely no experience in podcasting or anything, and then just I was some guy from the Navy, and to be able to highlight your story and share your story with, you are sharing it with the intentionality to help other people and to continue to help yourself. So I'm glad that you answered that question, and that it's a couple things. It's a very dynamic situation, clearly, but it's not just the counseling, it's not just meeting and talking with other people, but it's you said the workout of the day, so the WOD for the non-CrossFitters, workout that you created that became an annual thing, and all of these things. And one of the most powerful things I pulled out of that, a little bit farther back, was like, thank God your mom told you what she told you, right? So having people in our lives that tell us what we need to hear, not what we want to hear, and even and especially when it comes from somebody so close, it can be pretty tough to hear that. But again, that's the time to actually act on that advice and not just have it go over your head. And when you do these things that you're saying, and I can't believe that story that you told us about looking into the mirror. Typically on this show, we talk about figuratively looking into the mirror, and I have never heard of an episode talk about literally looking into the mirror like that, and that's so powerful, right? So it's just all of these things. I appreciate you sharing that. In totality, we are able to, if we so choose, to make an effort and understand that it's not going to happen overnight, because this was a process for you, and you're continually doing it. So wow, that's great. So let's pivot a little bit. What are some of the things for or with Legion 8? How are you helping people through that?
So it's, I mean, it kind of, again, I didn't expect it, but we went from doing the first year one place, the next year 3 places, the next year 10 places, the next year 50 gyms around the country are contacting me. Hey, can you come out here and because I give a talk and we share a video of the men and do a pretty powerful presentation beforehand. And from that, we would sell shirts to kind of, raise a little bit of money to help fly some of the family members in, because it just means the world to them. When you make that promise of their boy's name never being forgotten, and every year see a new shirt with, their kid's name on it. So yes, it was about 4 or 5 years into it, made the decision to go the nonprofit route. And then it was, all right, what is our true mission going to be with this? And man, I got 4 kids. I got a full-time day job and, was in the process of writing the book at that point. And so I say all that, we purposely kept Legion 8 small right now because I want to do something that I can control and do things to make a positive impact. And so what I look for is primarily focused on veterans. We have helped other non-veteran, and really the common theme in it is people that have been affected by tragedy and trauma and don't have the means. Sometimes with those things, there's financial loss involved. For an example, there's a guy, his 16-year-old daughter tripped and fell and hit her head on the concrete, ended up dying from it. And wow. Yeah, it was just a crazy thing. And there was a lot of, medical fees and things involved with that. And, just we did a special event kind of in honor of this, and all funds raised went to assist the family in that. So yeah, we kind of just look for small, particular things. And now that things are kind of slowing down, the kids are getting a little bit older. The goal is to scale this thing, and sort of the next phase. What I want to look to do with it is there's so many veteran groups out there, and I think the majority of them have the best intentions in the world. And the downside of that is sometimes we run the risk of cannibalizing each other. When you're out asking for funds and donations of, all right, which one do I support? Or are you? Very good point. Maybe that's what we do. We just stay small moving forward, or potentially align ourselves with some other veterans groups. And maybe, I've talked to some different people, and instead of having one, have a coalition of, call it Legion 8 size nonprofits. And we all share a common goal, but we have different, maybe, specific particular things that are important to each one. But with our collective power of fundraising and stories, we can ultimately raise more money and generate enough funds and donations to go and do better things for all of them. So that's kind of the goal and the mission in the next year or two, and we'll see where it goes.
No, I think that's a great idea. There's a plethora of these organizations out there, and that's phenomenal. But for the end user, it can be a little bit difficult at times to be able to, like you said, who do I donate? Who do I help? They all want to do good, and they are doing good. But I think if you're able to pull together resources and be able to do it like that, that would be really powerful. So I think it's great that you're doing that. You're giving talks and you have the exercises as well, because I believe as much as I do that attacking it not just mentally but physically as well is something that me personally has helped substantially, being able to go out there and burn that energy, So not just the physical energy. I mean, really like go out there and think. Everybody works out, lifts differently, but to me, like, that's my time to think. So being able to do like something like that, I think is really important. You mentioned your kids. You have 4 kids, and I saw you had an Instagram post, I think it was, about like rucking, and or you had your kid on your front, and you were pushing your boys and everything, and I'm like, it's so funny how you're like, oh, the military prepped me for this, and I was like laughing, but then you said right there, like, I'm a newer father. My daughter's about 15 months old, and it's been really tough juggling my day job, the podcast, being a parent, being a husband, all of these things. And so one of my questions, as we simmer down here a little bit, get towards the end a little bit, have you had any issues? I mean, it sounds like you have, but have you had any issues kind of balancing all of these things that you were doing? But how have you been able to achieve, like, finding your version of balance? And balance might not be the right word at all, but how have you been able to at least, work through that and be able to lean forward into that?
And that is such a good question and an opportune time to ask it. I mean, you're right. I mean, 4 kids, one of which lives 3 hours away, so there's the time involved. But, when we go to get him, that puts a strain on 3, 4 and under back here on my wife, full-time job, and trying to promote the book, trying to do things with Legion 8. And, so what I did is I got out again. Like I said, I got a pretty good job and been fortunate in my career, and have had, I'll call it relative success in the business world, and had moved up to a pretty, a good job that I had the last year. And, what I found in that is, while it had, a good paycheck that came with it, the time involved didn't allow me to get the priority and focus on, in my eyes, what is really most important in life. I don't want people to read on my tombstone one day about what my job title was. I want it to be about making a difference. Yet I found myself spending 40, 50, 60 hours a week. If I prioritize the top 5 things in my life, the thing that I spent the most time doing brought me the least amount of personal satisfaction. So I recently made a choice to make a career move in what some people would consider to be a step back in responsibility.
Sure.
But it's still a great opportunity with a great organization, one I'd worked with before, around great people that understand me and who I am and what's important to me in my life. And the job is much more flexible.
Good for you.
That allows me to not have to do the daily commute. So balance is, again, back to easy thing to say. It's an easy thing to say, I'm just going to walk away from this job. Then you look at it and like, all right, we're going to be able to pay the bills. But, at the end of the day, that's all, that's indifferent, man. Time with the kids, my personal message with the book, what that's about, trying to grow Legion Aid or some of the other things we talked about. And, first and foremost, being the husband and father that I need to be. And money, it'll take care of itself.
It will. And I love hearing that, especially, I say this a lot on the podcast, but the podcast is definitely for me too. Like, I'm asking these questions because I genuinely want to know the answers to them, because I struggle with this stuff. Like, you said, you're just a regular guy. I'm a regular guy too. And this is stuff I struggle with every single day. I'm stressed the hell out right now as we're recording this, it's tough. Life is tough, and so is it. And that's just the way it is for most everybody. And we're recording this, what is it now, in June of 2020, so you'll be hearing this a little bit later. And we're dealing with a lot of stuff in this country right now, at least in the United States and really all over the world. There's always something going on, and it's always stressful, but ultimately you have to do what's best for you. And I think fiscally speaking, it can be difficult, like you said, to kind of take a step backward. But what metric are you using? Are you only using the fiscal metric, or are you taking into your happiness at all? Because after a certain amount of money that you're making, if you can provide for yourself and for your family, then what does it really matter? Now, this could go a plethora of ways, and ways we're not going to go into this podcast, but I believe, for me at least, over a certain point, as long as I can take care of that family, now it's, we really, really need, you should always take your happiness into account, because I believe that finances will find a way. I think you said something like that, but, don't forget about your happiness, and definitely don't forget about the time that you have with your family. And that's something I'm learning so much. So I more than applaud you for taking that step. I think it's not a step backward, like you said. Some people might see it. I know you don't see it like that. I know you don't see it like that, but you said other people might see it like that. So I just want to continue to shift the perspective of other people thinking that a fiscal decrease means a career, a step back or something like that. It's quite the opposite,
Yeah, and let me add one point on that. So I went and talked to with the nonprofit and some other things. I'm pretty fortunate to get around some people in some high leadership positions in different organizations. And so I approached a few of them about this. I'm like, man, all right, here's what I'm thinking. Say none of this stuff works out with the book or the nonprofit, and 2 years from now I'm back out, trying to get that higher job again. And again, I got a good job. Like I said, I don't want any of my coworkers to listen to me and think that I'm diminishing the responsibility. I got a lot to do. But again, just how people perceive things on paper.
Sure.
And to a man and woman, every one of these people I talked to, when I told them what I was looking at doing, I was like, so what would you think if I'm in your office 2 or 3 years from now? And they'd say, I would pat you on the back and say, hell yeah, son, come on board, because you just went and did what every one of us wishes we would have at some point in our career. And that's focus on what is most important to us in life.
Yeah.
And so bravo to you, man, for doing it. So you talked about, a lot of the theme of your podcast of, building a career and so on and so forth. And it's an evolution, man. Mine was all about money. It was all about how to get away from the other stuff I was dealing with. And then it was, okay, I'm comfortable with that. Now let me establish myself. All right. So I did that. And now it's, that briefs well, but that doesn't make me happy, man. It's my family. It's helping people. It's spreading a message of hope and overcoming adversity. That's what I want to be about. So let me, instead of finding a career that allows me to go buy nice things and go support other organizations like that, let me find a career that will help me build my own and give me the time to do that.
Yeah, and I think one of the good exercises, I guess, that you pulled out from there is asking other people, or at least envisioning yourself years in the future. And I like personally envisioning myself having accomplished something. And for me, that works. And I think it really helps in this situation of what you're doing and say, would I truly be happy? And you know what? We always hear that one of the biggest regrets in life at the end of life, when I've seen those polls where they poll like people on their deathbed, which sounds a little morbid, but like they go, I regret, not spending more time with my family or things like that. And God forbid I get to that, if we collectively get to that point. So being able to realize that now is phenomenal. And you know what? I'm going to speak towards something you said way earlier in the podcast about I don't know if the word you used was wasted, but you said you wasted like 5 years of your life. And quite frankly, Jeff, I don't see it that way, because you know what? You could have gone your whole entire life not having turned the handle. You could have not pivoted at all, and you could have lived the rest of your life in those dark shadows, going home every single night, doing a job you didn't want to do, not spending time with family or friends or anything like that. So you are on the right path, man, and you're doing great things, and that's what matters. You made the pivot, you made it, and you've inspired me, and I know you've inspired other people on the podcast, so I really appreciate it. This has been a phenomenal podcast. I appreciate you coming on and speaking with us. But before we get out of here, please let us know how we can find the book, find the nonprofit, get a hold of you, or anything else you'd like to share.
Yeah, no, thanks, man. I appreciate the kind words. And again, it's just an honor to be on here. So for the book, the best place to get it is on Amazon. Again, it's just Legion Rising, Surviving Combat, The Scars It Left Behind. It's on some of the other booksellers, but it's the cheapest on Amazon.
Okay.
Legion 8 Foundation, really do everything. We got a page, Legion 8, on Facebook. I don't do as much through there anymore. Most everything is on Instagram. It's just at Legion 8 Foundation, and it's the number 8, Legion 8 Foundation. And me personally, best way, again, I kind of keep Facebook for family. So Instagram would be the best way, and it's at Rise with Jeff. Very simple, Rise with Jeff, Jeff. I do a little bit on Twitter, but not a whole lot. I'm kind of just sticking to Instagram. I got too many things going on in my life to worry about too many social media sites. Got a website, it's Jeff.Morris, Jeff-Morris.com, and kind of got that up recently, and probably going to be redoing that soon.
Okay.
Going to be redoing the Legion 8 website as well. And it's all kind of the evolution of the next year.
Sweet. Well, as always, you all will be able to find all of that and more in the show notes, and I highly encourage you to check it out. Head over to the Instagram page and see what Jeff is doing, see what Legion 8 Foundation is doing, and head over to Amazon. I'll link it all in the show notes. You guys will be able to see it. Jeff, thanks so much again for coming on here. This is good. It's for me as a podcast host, having done this for a little while now, over 2 years, for having come on and hearing certain stories in a way and in a light that I've never heard them before is always so powerful. I'm specifically talking about what you pulled out of the book and you said about looking into the mirror and so many other things. So thank you so much for coming on the show. It is a very powerful episode, a lot of good things, a lot of tangible things that we can apply to our own lives, and that's one of the beauties of being able to do something like this, is not just listening to it for entertainment, but able to pull things out of here that we can apply to our own lives and actually make the change in our own lives. So thanks so much and have a great night.
You too, man. Thanks again, Chris. I appreciate it.